In this video, I will talk about data gathering for reflection and growth. Our Principles to Action book talked about intentional and structured reflections. In order to create those intentional and structured reflections, we need to collect some data. Now I'm going to talk about different forms of data. Videotaping teaching and our classroom discourse, gathering student work, conducting student interviews, taking some observation notes, journaling, and documenting cycles of lesson planning are forms of data I will describe today. Video analysis is noted as an effective form of professional development, and for some cases, it's noted to be more effective than live observation because it provides room for reflection and allows for evidence-based conversations. You can focus the video just to yourself, or you can capture the whole class conversations. It all depends on your purpose. It is always good to have focus areas for reflection purposes. For example, I can ask, what is mathematical focus of my questions? Or, in what ways do I allow my students make connections between student strategies and key mathematical ideas of the lesson? Or I can ask, what are some productive talk moves I use and which moves do I need to work on? These questions will allow me to gather evidence to answer these questions. Gathering student work and conducting student interviews are other forms of data. When we gather student work or when we conduct student interviews, we might look at student solutions to mathematics task of the lesson. We can collect students' written explanations. We can listen students' verbal explanations and questions, or we can look for student-to-student discourse lines. For the last two items, you may need to videotape student interactions. When we collected this data, we can look for evidence of student learning, our students' growth. We can describe common misconceptions and struggles. We can talk about most preferred strategies or representations. We can look at students' argumentation skills, like in what ways their arguments are evidence-based, how well they can follow another person's arguments, and we can also look for opportunities to engage in mathematics. We can ask questions like who is more vocal, who stays quiet, and how they are using language in explaining their thinking. Observations is another form of data. You can choose to use different observation protocols provided in our coaching book, or you can get some observation protocols from other resources and observe a mathematics lesson. Making note of data during live observations is very important. If you do not want to use a structured observation protocol, you can visit a classroom with some focus questions. It's important to know what we are looking for because live observations can be very overwhelming. Not everything has to turn into numbers. Observations for professional development purposes shouldn't be clouded with the fear of getting evaluated. Journaling or creating evidence-based reflective narratives is another form of data. You can keep a reflection journal and write reflective narratives on a periodic basis. For example, every 2 days or every week, however fits your purpose. Your professional growth goals might inform your narratives. You can add pictures of student work. You can note some questions or issues that came up in your classes. You can make this journaling process more interactive. How about having a journaling partner? Reading each other's entries on a regular basis and responding can be a basic activity that you can do on a regular basis. Finally, documenting cycles of lesson planning is another form of data that you can gather for your professional growth. We all know that intentional planning will help us get better. Documenting this process will provide you some evidence to reflect on. For example, you can ask these questions. How did I get better in my anticipation of student responses? In what ways my questions help me to facilitate a better discussion? Are these planning sessions helping me get better at my teaching? What parts are working and what parts are not working? You can turn this intentional planning into a collaborative activity. Thank you for listening.